feel like we have the skill.
Well,
There it is. Or we don't feel like we have the skill set to talk about things in an alchemical way. So let me just kind of start with some definitions. When we're working restoratively with our people, we are helping their body come back into a state of homeostasis so that the body can heal. We find restorative work when we're doing a session where we're looking to see what the highs and lows are, and we're harmonizing those things, and we're exporting a capsule, and we're working with something that's like we're trying to get somebody back into a state of balance or homeostasis. And it's really important work. People cannot do the deeper work that I'm going to talk about in NeruoCohesion, which is the alchemical work. They cannot do that work unless they're in a restored state. So these two things are not an either or. They have to go hand in hand. Sometimes we need to restore someone's, let's say, nervous system because they're so deeply in fight or flight that they can't receive the work to do something deeper or to change some deep pattern. They need these restorative moments where we restore the energy balance so the body can heal. They need rest in between sessions. That's something else that I'll talk a lot about, but I find that we as practitioners with the genius tend to do too much and too often. And the body sometimes needs these restorative breaks in between, these times to integrate and catch up. The energy needs to catch up. And so we want to be able to balance working in this place where we can bring the body back into homeostasis. If you've ever been to the acupuncturist.
Be alert for what?
And make sure you guys are all on mute for me.
Say it? Somebody.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that, like, if you've ever been to the acupuncturist and they felt all of the different chi, or they took your pulses, and then they put in needles and you lay there quietly and you let your body restore, right? That's a restorative session. They knew what you needed. They put the right needles in, and you're getting this chance to kind of come back to center, come back to normal, to homeostasis. And often that's how we are working with the genius. We're kind of looking to see what needs to be harmonized, and we're harmonizing that. And that is deeply important work. It's preventative work. The more we can keep a body in homeostasis, then the more the body can just do its natural healing. And so I don't know if you know this, but like in traditional Chinese medicine, it is meant to be a preventative way of working. And the emperor, actually the Chinese doctor would only be in trouble if someone got sick, that the value was in keeping them well, right? And so restorative work keeps us well. It's preventative. And we need to be in that state in order to do what I call alchemical work or transformational work, which is when we begin to bring our clients into the session with us, when we begin to talk about what is there, what the deeper meanings are. I'm going to talk all about that as we go. But alchemical means I'm going to collect the entire narrative. I'm going to collect all the core beliefs and the fears and the emotions and the physical patterns and the amino acids. I'm going to collect the entire story, and I'm going to run that. I'm going to run that with my genius, but I'm also going to talk to my client about what's there. Because when I talk to them, when I involve them in their own healing, there is a deeper intention and a deeper attention to how they can change and do things differently, right? So they become I'm going to talk about this in just a minute, but when we help our clients have that aha moment that helps them see their own pattern or see themselves, then they're now involved in the healing in a way that is going to be much more impactful for them to be able to transform an old pattern. So if you've ever had a client where, let's say they have a lower back pain, and they just keep having the same lower back pain again and again and again, and you just keep working on the same issue, it could be that the restorative work that you're doing isn't enough, that they need to become aware of maybe different patterns in their life, different ways they might be moving through the world, different thoughts they might be thinking, core beliefs they might be believing that are necessary for them to become aware of in order for them to change. We say in the healing realm, that's making the unconscious conscious. It's like bringing the awareness up and then having a conversation about it. And often some of us are really not comfortable in that realm. We've been trained to kind of do what we do and then send an export and maybe talk a little bit about it. And that's great. That's really necessary work. I want to say that again and again. That's really necessary. But sometimes we need to be able to help them go deeper. We need to be able to help them have that aha moment that helps them really shift a big pattern. And that's alchemical work. Not everyone likes to do alchemical work, and that's okay. You don't have to do alchemical work to be an amazing practitioner. It's just that place where there's a both and. There's also sometimes we just have to do this bigger picture work. And that's where, and I was designed to do that. So in this course, we're going to talk about 5 elements. We're going to talk a little bit about human design. And for me, I am someone who is designed to help people go deep and to make those big transformations, to rewrite their narratives, to tell a different story in their mind, in their emotions, and in their body. And that might not resonate for you, and that's okay. There's nothing that you have to change. This is just an offering of a way that you could add some things into your sessions that could help, especially for those places where people start to get stuck, or those bigger things that you're like, I don't really know how to get to what I'm trying to get to. So I'm going to stop my share for a second, and I'm just going to check in and just see how many of you, if you want to show with your raising of your hands, and just like how many of you feel like you're working restoratively and alchemically, or you've ever heard of working like from an alchemical perspective. Yeah, we got some people. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Like there's stuff there. Yeah. I think the more you practice energy medicine in general, there's no way to avoid going down the road in which you're doing more alchemical work, because it's the natural progression of like, I think we all start with like, how can I help on this kind of physical level? People come to me with like physical things or even mental things. And then we quickly find out like, oh, but that's like your parents' pattern, or it's an ancestral pattern, or it's a past life pattern, or, it's like we immediately, I think the curiosity that brought us to be good practitioners takes us to that place, right? That we want to go and work deeper. Oh, I'm just now seeing the chat. I'm seeing some things in there too. So yeah, I'm going to define the 5 elements and human design and gene keys and all those things in just a minute too. So are there any questions before I go back in there and I start rambling on, which I can do? Does anybody have any questions about the difference between working restoratively and alchemically? Okay. Doesn't look like, I'm not seeing anybody with any major questions yet. So you're always welcome to put them in the chat. Connie will let me know that they're there if you have a question. Okay, so let's just keep going then. And keep doing. All right. So I have found in my work, and I'm sure you have found as well, especially if you're moving in a place where you are working alchemically, that in order for us to create the deepest amount of change, we have to work with archetypes. We have to work with these, what I'm going to call the supramental level of our being. And so archetypes themselves, I'm sure you've heard of archetypes in many ways, the astrology and Carl Jung and tarot and the Enneagram and every personality test that someone takes. There is an archetype is a collection of attitudes and beliefs and ways of being, perceptions that exist on the collective unconscious level. We're not typically conscious of them until we study them. They're patterns that are revealed to us. They're underlying truths that kind of play out through all of humanity. And so the best fiction is written about, people playing out different archetypes. Joseph Campbell studied a lot of archetypes. So, and Carl Jung obviously is another big archetypal component, right? And we look to archetypes to help us see, to make the unconscious conscious. And there's a reason for that. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, and we're programmed to do that. And at a cellular level, humans are innately curious about themselves and about other people. And that is why we love a personality quiz. We love to know a little bit more about ourselves, right? It's like, we love to get that report back. They're like, oh my gosh, that totally lands for me, right? So we love that because we're programmed to seek out these archetypes and how they play out in our lives. There's lots of archetypal systems. And what I want to say to archetypes in general is that if you've ever taken an archetypal quiz or, like the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, the truth about archetypes is that they give us some insight into how we lead in the world, but it isn't who we are. A lot of archetypal systems, we tend to say, I am blank. I am a Libra. I am a Libra rising and I am a Scorpio moon, right? Like I tend to put the I am statement. And in human design, I am a generator. I am a, whatever. So it's like, those are archetypal systems that we're going to talk about. But it's like, the thing about archetypes is that we're all of them. We just tend to lead in certain realms with certain patterns. And sometimes that's when we're in our stressed state. And sometimes it's when we're in our most highest expression of who we are. And so for me, I got to archetypes, one, through 5-element work. So 5 elements, which we're going to dive into over the next several weeks, are a system of archetypes. But because that's the root of my background, I also had some deep work with a book called the I Ching, which is an ancient text, an ancient Chinese text. And it translates to the Book of Changes. And it's these 64 archetypes of who we are designed to be in the world, who we are meant to be. And if we work through the wheel of the I Ching, then we are working our way to our highest expression. And there are 64 ways that we could be in our highest expression. And then from there, you can imagine that there's a correlation between archetypes and genes, genetics, right? So from there, long before we understood the genome realm, Chinese medicine understood these 64 ways, right? And they correlate to our 64 genes and how we express. So at the archetypal level, we have these like guides, these unconscious collective guides, but there's a direct tie to the physiology through the genetics, through the expressions. And then we cross the bridge into chemistry and amino acids, right? So it's not a hierarchy, it's a circle, right? And so we have these archetypes. And to me, I like to practice from a perspective of the 5 bodies of consciousness. And what that means, that's just an easy way of saying it. Some people call it 12. There's all sorts of different ways. All of them are right. But for me, the most simple way is to say, at the 5th level, at the biggest level, we are all one energy. There is the oneness of all things. And that is in religion, that has all sorts of different names. God and all of the different ways in which you would name God, the universe, source. Spirituality would call it source, right? And then in science and quantum physics, we would call it dark matter or 0-point energy. But it is this energy that is the matrix that everything else comes from. So that's the biggest body. That's number 5. And then number 4 is, as we begin to collapse and condense in the quantum realm, everything is just energy and potential until we begin to collapse that event into physical. So where we move from being energetic to being particle. And as we begin to do that, there's a process of condensing that energy, of collapsing that energy. And so the supramental level, level 4, is this realm of the archetype. It's these collective unconscious thoughts and patterns and belief systems and attitudes that get passed down through generations. So we've got that genetic, it moves, it's fluid in that way. And it kind of sets the tone of who we're gonna be when we show up in this world, right? There's kind of like the map, the compass. And so when we look at archetypes like human design, or we look at 5 elements, or we look at the I Ching, or we look at astrology, that's where all of that lives, those collective belief systems. And they're usually very unconscious until they are made conscious. But from that level, that actually guides what we would call the next level, which is the mental level. So from the archetypes, it kind of guides how I think, how my mind is going to react to the world around me. It guides my thoughts and my perceptions, right? So we've got these filters of perceptions. I'm a Libra rising, I'm a Scorpio moon. Those are filters that are there when I open my eyes, right? And so it's like, and that guides some of how I think and how I react to the world around me. So it guides this mental thought. And then we know now scientifically, as I know many of you already know this, I'm just recapping, but what we think and how we think has emotion. It moves emotion, it moves energy in the system. It creates chemistry, right? And so we get this movement of energy, emotions. We call that the vital body. And in the vital body, we have things like the energy centers of the chakras, we have the meridians, we have all the places in which we move energy. And then where we experience that movement of energy and in the physical body, the last body of consciousness is in the physical body. So we begin to have a physical experience with that emotion and that thought and that supramental pattern. And so that's really what I mean when I say the mind-body connection, is the remembering that there is no mind and body, that it's all a collapsed event. And in quantum physics, we would say for it to exist at all, it collapses on all of those levels at one time. A collapse event collapses the entire bodies of consciousness at once. So you can't have a mind without a body. So it always kind of confused me, the mind-body connection, until I finally kind of got to that place of like, right, there is no connection. It just is. It's all the same thing. It's all working together. And that's what I mean if I refer to the mind-body connection, I'm referring to this 5 bodies of consciousness, all of it working together. Which I know as practitioners, because this is an incredibly diverse and intelligent community, I'm sure that's how there's an awareness there of that, even if you didn't have the words but that you're already aware that you have to work with things the way they think and the way they feel and the way they're moving emotion in their system. And so for me, when I went to write NeruoCohesion and I wanted to bring out a way in which I could teach 5 elements to people and in a really useful and positive way, that's the archetypal system I chose. I could have chosen many archetypal systems. Archetypes are one of my areas of study, and I love in neurology, I love to study perception, and that's how my love of archetypes happened in the first place. So, but I found that 5 elements work was it's the foundation of Chinese medicine. So it's a proven system for how things are interconnected on all of those levels. It's an amazing archetypal system that shows us what's going on at the spiritual, at the supramental, at the mental, at the emotional, and the physical level. And that we can find these patterns, that we don't have to do this guesswork. The 5 element theory, the laws of the 5 element already have kind of figured all that out for us. And so it's a really amazing way to be able to find the patterns, to be able to see what's going on for people at that alchemical level without having to kind of dig or even have the words. You can kind of see it. And so I've worked deeply with the 5 elements for many years. I've taught 5 elements work for a long time. But then I also started to really I guess it's been about 8 years, but about 8 years ago, I found human design. I resisted human design. I came back to human design. I put it down again. It was like, I really didn't want to step fully into the realm of human design. I really resisted at first. There's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly because it felt like it was a ton of information. And I'm designed to love information, but it also kind of felt exclusive and elusive in many ways. Like I couldn't quite grasp it. But then really in the last kind of, I'd say 5 years specifically, I've really been pulling it in. And really, I took the courses I needed to take. I learned more about it. And I really found that when I understood someone's human design and I understood the 5 elements, that together those things were allowed me to really get to the depth of like whatever kind of transformation somebody needed, from back pain to depression to, changing a relationship to whatever was happening, to neurological problem, deep neurological problems, that knowing these 2 things together were the archetypal systems that really helped me become the best practitioner that I am so far, right? Like, I think we're all growing all the time. So first of all, I just want to stop there for a second and just see how many of you have heard of 5 element work. I just kind of want to get a sense of how many already know. Yeah. Good. I see some hands up. So 5 elements, it's been around for a long time. I like to see that there's several people here that already have a sense of it. And also maybe there are some people that are going to hear about it for the first time. So that's really exciting. How many people have heard of human design or the gene keys? Also got some hands up. It's interesting. More people tend to have heard of 5 elements than they've heard of the human design and the gene keys. Although the genius community, I know for years, there's been times where we've talked about the gene keys, right? And I know that there are, I don't remember who wrote them, but somebody has an excellent library or master branch for the gene keys. I can't remember exactly who wrote them, but so it's been around. I mean, I've talked about it in this community before too. So how many of you know your chart, have looked at your own chart, or have worked with like either your hologenetic profile from a gene keys perspective or your body graph from human design? I see a couple hands up. I hope the rest of you are getting like that you're not sleeping. No, okay. You can sleep if you want to, it's fine. Okay. So it just helps me to know, where people are. In this masterclass, we are obviously not going to be able to go through all of human design, right? But I do want to start by just kind of giving you a quick background to what human design is, where it came from, and why I think it's relative to our work, right? So the gene keys are part of human design. I'm going to explain that in just a second. This is the 5-minute history of human design. I will not make y'all listen to the whole background, but I want you to kind of have a sense, right? So in the 1980s, Ra Uru, who is the person that got the download for human design, basically had this moment where he got this, he received the transmission of human design. He received the whole thing kind of at one time. And so he sat down and he wrote it fiercely and furiously and got it all into the world. And he is designed the way that Ra Uru is designed. He was designed to bring something new into the world. That's actually what he was here to do. And in the early years, the early teachings of human design, they can be intense. As he was a manifestor, if you know the types of human design, and I'm going to go over them if you don't, but manifestor energy can sometimes have an intensity to it. And so he a lot of people had a hard time receiving it because it felt a little abrasive, and it needed languaging that would help it. He had a way of kind of saying, this is the way it is. It can't really be changed. And so for a long time, I think people had a kind of push-pull relationship, which is very manifestor of it. It's like push-pull relationship. I want it, but I'm not sure about it, but no, I don't know. And so I think that happened for a lot of people. And then, oh, somebody's a projector. I love to have projectors around. I'm a generator, in case anybody couldn't figure that out. And we'll talk about those types in a minute. But so over the years, he had people working with him, and the language got softer. It got easier for people to interpret. easier for people to really understand. And then about 2018, it kind of had a resurgence or a big push forward, I think, from an archetypal level, from a cosmic level, kind of got a push forward. And that also coincided with some teachers who could teach it in a way that felt a little more embodied, or a way that it didn't feel so mental, because when it was first downloaded, is a very comprehensive thing. And so it felt very mental. And so it took some people being able to figure out it took years of like, okay, now we have this new thing. What does that look like in practice? Right. Like, and we are just really now beginning to be able to have embodied experiences with human design, where people are really like, okay, I get it. And there's enough teaching now that I can start to use it in my life, to use it as a tool. Because it's still, relative to the cosmos, it's a brand new concept to us, right? Like, it's still very new. And so what human design basically does, it is a layering of many archetypal systems. So the first layer is the I Ching. All 64 of those gates exist in human design. The next layer is those gates in relationship to your astrology. The next layer is those gates in relationship to your chakras. In human design, it's a 9-centered being that the heart chakra split into 2 centers, and the emotional solar plexus split into 2 centers. So there are 9 centers instead of 7. And then it is also based on the Kabbalah. So we have this kind of overlaying of this. You could see why, like, it's a lot, right? It's a lot for people to learn. It's a lot for people to decode, but it's this really beautiful map. They call it your body chart. And I like to say that it's really this compass to your life, right? Like, that you are not your chart, like you are not any one archetype, but your chart is kind of the cliff notes to who you're trying to become. And your relationship to your chart, it's a dynamic living relationship, right? Like, we are all 64 gates. We are all 9 centers. We are all of the archetypes. And you are in a dynamic living relationship with your chart and who it says you're here to be, right? So when I say I am a generator, right? Like, and I have all those other types as well, but I lead with generator, and that's the way my energy functions. And understanding that, and the limitations of that, and the benefits of that are what I'm here to experience this time around. So it's this really beautiful, deep, intricate archetypal system. And you can see why some people would be like, oh, that's too much. It's a lot to learn, right? And so in this masterclass, we are obviously not going to learn human design, because it's, we've only got 6 weeks, and there's no way for me to teach you that in 6 weeks. But we are going to talk about types. And the reason why we're going to talk about types is because I have found that when I'm working with my clients, if I can know their 5 element, if I know that archetype and how that plays out in their life, and I know their type and their human design, that alone gives me quite a bit of information about how they need to move through the world, how their energetic system is different than my energetic system. And so what could feel right to me could feel very wrong to them. And that's okay. That's meant to be that way, right? So it's like, we are designed to be different. We're designed to be uniquely, wildly different people. Oh, thank you, Barbara, for putting up a picture of the chart. That's a picture of if you look in the chat, Barbara put up I think that's, I don't have my glasses on, Barbara, but I think that's your chart. And so you can see we have this down the side, we have all of these I don't know if I can put that up on my screen fully, but you can see that we have all of the astrology with these numbers. Those are the gates. And then you can see these centers moving that connect, like the chakras. And then you can, what these little white things are inside that, or these colored ones, those are the gates in relationship to the chakras. We'll talk more about human design. And I'm a bit of a geek. I have to be very careful not to try and give too much at one time, because it's like someone from one of my NeruoCohesion classes in the beginning said, learning from you is like standing in front of an open fire hydrant. And I was like, noted, I'm going to learn to dial that back because that's not helpful. No one's feeling better when that's the situation, right? So I'll try and rein it in so that you can take it in a good way. But what I want you to see there is that it's a deep and effective way to work with your clients. And I have found that beyond the genius, beyond my applied neurology, beyond all of the tools and things that I know, if I can really help somebody live in alignment with just a few key components of their chart, their physiology will change. Their emotional state will change. Their mental state will change. Like, I don't actually have to focus on those things so much, because when we are working with the archetypal level, there's what we call downward causation, meaning when we shift something from that perception, when we have the aha moment, it shifts the mental, the emotional, and the physical all at the same time, remembering that we collapse something on all of those levels at one time. That's why it's called the aha moment. In healing, I believe that we have two aha moments. We have the first aha moment, the jump, the quantum leap, we would say, from my physical experience to that unconscious archetype, the new awareness, the aha moment, where it's like when we relate someone's back pain to a kidney issue, which is this emotional state, right? Like there's this aha moment of like, oh, that's mental, right? That's a mental aha moment. A lot of people stop there. They have that mental aha moment and then they just kind of hang out. Like, it takes a long time for that aha moment to become an embodied experience where they literally are aligning their cells with that new awareness and they are making decisions from that place. It's different. It takes that's this, I often say it's the second aha moment. And I'm going to use this example. I am a generator in human design. There's some things about a generator that I'm here to build something. I'm here to build things. And I'm also here to wait to respond, right? And so I've been learning human design for many years, and I could kind of spout that off. I'm here to respond. I'm here to respond. It was very mental. It was like, oh, it was the aha moment when I learned it mentally. But when I actually like had this moment of how it was happening in my life, it was a very different moment of like, oh, wait, I can't just do that. Like, I have to wait to respond. I have to wait to respond. It was like, there's this embodiment moment that's different than just the mental understanding of of the aha moment. And sometimes that happens pretty quickly for people. And sometimes we have an aha moment that we're not going to resolve in this lifetime. Like, it just is never, it's one of our journeys to try and embody it. And we might not, there's no agenda, right? So just being aware that sometimes just because somebody can spout off what they know about themselves does not mean that they are living in alignment with those things or taking embodied action. And when I would say embodied action, I mean that their life choices are in alignment with that knowing, right? They might be able to tell you all day long what their patterns are, their conditioning are, the gates they have, the sun they have, that they're a fire element, but their life is not in alignment with those things. The choices that they make, the way that they move through the world, the way that they relate to people, those things don't always line up. So that's why it's the double, like the both and. We have the mental awareness, and then we have this place where the physical cells catch up. They say that span from the aha moment in the mental field to where the cells reprogram can take about 7 years, right? So it's like it can be this very long process to changing how we move through the world. That's part of the alchemical work that we talk about in NeruoCohesion. So that's kind of the quick look at what human design is. In this masterclass, the part that we'll do it after we do the elements, we'll look at the types, because it's kind of the first starting point for having, if you're working with your clients, knowing their type helps you to begin to help them. It's their energetic way of being in relationship. One of the things I love about human design, it's first about who am I here to be, not what am I here to do, but who am I here to be? And then how do I be that in relationship to other people? And then how do I use that to serve humanity on its whole? Astrology is the same thing. If you work through the houses, the wheel of astrology, it's about like the who am I here to be? Who am I in relationship? My closest relationships, and then my marriage or my love relationship or whatever that looks like. And then also, how am I here to serve the whole? So it's kind of that whole spectrum, the spiritual to the physical, right? So 5 bodies of consciousness. And so we'll work through the type, because what it's saying is how my energy functions it affects me, and it is how I'm meant to be in relationship with other people. So I think it's a really great starting point with your clients. And often I have found with my clients that it takes them a long time to embody their type. It's like the start, it's the tip of the iceberg, but without it, you can't really access the rest of their chart. And then we are also going to spend the next several weeks looking at 5-element work and looking at the different elements and their associations and ways to look at it through the genius, so that you can be working on that alchemical level and the restorative level, so that you know how to pull those things together. You might already be doing this in really great ways, in which case, like, go for it, do it your way, do it. I'm a big believer in that we are all going to bring our own special gifts. And there are things that I think we can all get from understanding how those things fit together. So again, the going forward today was a lot of talking. We're going to talk a lot because there are some foundational things. I need us to all be on the same page. When I say these things, I want you guys to know what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. And then starting next week, we'll really start to look at all 5 elements and start to look at their associations. And really, we'll spend the rest of this masterclass working, like looking at it through the lens of the genius, how you can pull these things together. I do want to say to everyone that has registered for the class, you will get a booklet, a handout that has all 5 elements and some scan sheets and some info, and then all the 5 types of human design. That's all in a handout that I'll get to you. And then also I'm going to give you a 5-element library that you can be working with your clients, so that you can be playing around. The NeruoCohesion class itself, we'll talk about it later, but it goes much deeper into many of these things, obviously, and it comes with its own set of libraries and master branches, and it's comprehensive, and it's, we're not there, but I want you to be able to be using the 5 elements in your work right now, because I just think it's a really powerful way to work. And so you'll be getting those libraries as long as you're registered, because it, obviously emails and libraries. So I'm aware of time. I'm aware of how much I can talk and throw things out there. And I want to give a chance to see if anybody has any questions, or if there's anything there before we start to wind it up for today, because I've been talking at you, and going forward, I'm not going to talk at you. We're going to do stuff together. So does anybody have any comments, questions, feedback that they'd like to share, their experience with human design or with 5 elements? Y'all are a quiet bunch. Is this how quiet you normally are? The one thing you're probably learning about me pretty quickly is that I'm not quiet. And I tend to just kind of, you get what you get. This is me. You get me all the time, just like this. Only sometimes I will have cuss words, and I'm going to try really hard not to, because I get it. And also sometimes they get out. So I'm going to pre-apologize. Let's see. All right. So Karen's got a great comment about the types don't cover the hybrid augmented DNA. And that is a thing for sure. And let's see. Yeah. Great. So I don't see any questions. I think that most people are just curious, which is a great place to be. Okay, so then that is all that that's where we're going to leave it for today. You can kind of simmer on those. I happen to know if you have a one line in your human design incarnation cross, you're going to go research it and want to learn more. And that's okay, because that's what one lines do. I'm a one line. We're researchers. We're literally the investigators. So, so yeah, if you're one of those people, I know you're going to know a lot more before you come next Friday. And if you're not, then you're going to get to, the rest of you just get to take the benefit of a one line who has studied all the things and figures it out and shares it. So that's it then for today. And I'm really excited. We will make sure that we're still trying to make sure that we have everybody's email. We think we got everybody's email when you registered. We're trying to get that list. So technology wise, we will figure out how to get you the booklet and the libraries. It might take us a little bit, so be patient, but we will get it all to you before next Friday, at least the booklet, so that you have it in your hand. And with that, I thank you so much for showing up, for being here, for this series, for the opportunity, and we will see you. Oh, that's one more thing I wanted to say. We might have a couple changes to the schedule because I've had some things come up. And so there might be a couple days that we shift around and we'll just add Fridays on is what we're going to do, or we're going to miss one or two and we'll just add Fridays to the end of it. But I'll let you know when those are coming up. So, okay. Thank you all so much for being here and sharing your time with me. And I will see you next Friday. All right.